Why, hello, YouTube. This is Baylor Mage again, and I'm coming at you with, we could call it a build guide. It's definitely a full explanation and a path of building of how we're doing stuff. What I will mention real quick right at the beginning is this won't be nearly as geared as full build guide you're used to getting from me personally. The reason for this is we're in a private league and I can only work with what we've got access to. I can't just buy whatever I want. So this is a positive and a negative. The positive is the gear I'm wearing and the amount of power I have is probably far more obtainable to most people than build guides I might make in the trade league. The bad news is I do not have a min-maxed version of this to show you because I'm just existing in the private league. So I have some theories about how I would take this further. We'll go through them. But looking in the background, you might notice I have a bunch of minions, specifically Spectres, just running off into the distance and murdering themselves and then instantly being resummoned. And they're Spectres, and Spectres don't resummon themselves. So what's going on there? Well, this build is using the Spectres called Dark Marionettes, and their main job, is that they reform after being killed. So 1 second with no way to increase that cooldown, 1 second later, a Dark Marionette after dying will just reform itself magically. So I currently have 7 of the exact same Spectre, all of which I am killing with Infernal Legion support and blowing up with minion instability. And then they just resummon and they go out again. This is the smoothest build I have played in potentially years. Is it S tier clear speed? No. Is it S tier boss damage? No. But it's pretty good. I'm currently sitting at some pretty good damage. We'll get into that in the path of building. But what I have to say is, no matter what you make path of building look like, it feels better in game. We have 100% damage uptime all the time on every boss, no matter what we're doing. It does not matter. You don't have to aim, you don't have to pay attention, you don't have to think about it. All you have to do is dodge abilities. This has been the smoothest build I have played in ages. So, enough of that footage. Actually, not enough of that footage. Let's go over why we're using perfect marionettes while this is up. So, perfect dark marionette Spectres have 3 lines to them. The first line all marionettes have, which is reform after death. The second line is minions explode on death for 5% of their life as physical, fire, and lightning. That means there's a 15% total explosion that's happening on top of the minion instability. Those explosions are happening at the same time. I want to note we can't account for that 15% explosion in path of building yet. We can only do the minion instability part. These Spectres do not exist in path of building. So we've found some stand-ins, but be aware there's a 15% explosion happening as well that we are not accounting for. And then the third version, the perfect ones, add the line, your minions apply Scorch or applies Scorch or something like that. Now, the Scorch seems to be uniformly 8 to 10% no matter what I do. If I hit a resistance against fire one, it's like 2 to 3%. But if I hit any normal rare, it's 8 to 10. And if I hit a pinnacle boss, it's 8 to 10. So it's just an 8 to 10 Scorch all the time. Which, hey, 10% Scorch for free, fine. I'll take it, no problem. No problem at all. So when making this build, it is important, in my opinion, that you have at least 2 of the perfect marionettes, and all the rest of them must be at least the normal ones, not the imperfect ones. The imperfect ones are missing a whole bunch of their own explosions. They're worthless to us. We do not want those. You don't have to have all the perfect ones though. We want to apply Scorch. We want to make sure we're applying Scorch on single targets, so we want at least 2 of our 7 to be perfect. I currently have all 7 perfect. That's what I would suggest if you can afford it, but you can definitely get going without them. So let's jump in and go through a few more things. All right, so here's my dude just sitting in my hideout. You will notice right now, I am using Malgara's Lens. Now, this is not the long-term plan for this build, but for now, I'm using it with Necromantic Aegis. The point of this is to get -50 to all elemental resistances onto my minions. What I really want is to get a Fortress Covenant Jewel. Now, the Fortress Covenant Jewel will make my minions take increased damage, which is what we want. And I plan to put it in one of two spots. This needs testing, and I would have tested it if I already had one. I can put it here, where it'll hit that node, this node, and that node, where I will take, because these travels are good, and these travels are good, and these three notables will turn into increased damage taken for minions, which will be 60%. I will respec out of Necrotic Aegis and put a real shield on for me. And if those three are enough, great. And if they are not, we could spec it over here. We could give up this one life node, take these two, and take that one. And that would give us 4 nodes, which all give 20% increased damage taken. If I need the 4th node, I'll come over here. But it is a little bit more wasted points over here. Whereas when I put it in here, the travel nodes that I plan on taking are good. Like, these are 12% minion nodes. This one's free because we're already traveling through it. And these are 4% life nodes. So at least my travel nodes will be good. So if 3 is enough, great. How do you know what is enough, Baylor? Well, that's a great question. When building your own build of this kind, I think it is important that your minions make it to the near the edge of your screen before dying. Which means when you've got your Infernal Legion in, however much damage they take, you need to balance that with the amount of movement speed that you've got, so that when you go to click on the corner of your screen with your brand just to make them travel, they'll make it to at least the end of the screen. And I will show you what I mean here in a more open area. I want them to be able to make it to around here on my screen. If they don't get that far, if they die earlier, then you won't be able to do damage to stuff that's near the edge of your screen. So the more minion movement speed we get, the faster we can make them burn. The faster we can make them burn, the more damage we do. So that's all just going to be a balancing act. For now, I'm running haste and I have 1 minion speed ring. That's been enough. I'm hoping to get 1 more minion speed ring in a little bit later. Let's rip that back out. Okay, so moving over to the path of building. Here is our path of building. Now, we can't actually register full DPS in this build, or at least I don't know how. What we can do is measure average hits. The one thing that's in this path of building that you do not need, the one thing that's very expensive, is Replica Dragon Fang, by the way. Replica Dragon Fang I'm using because I have it. We absolutely don't need it. We're not relying on the RMR. We are currently relying on the +3 levels, but there are plenty of other ways to get minion levels. You can get corruptions, you can get level 21s, you can get +2 weapons, you can get +1 shields. The important thing is that your Spectre reaches level 25 total. In a private league, we just have this, so it made it a lot easier for me in a private league to reach +1 Spectre. That's how we go from 5 to 6. And we're going from 6 to 7 via using a Delve drop chest for +1 to maximum number of Spectres. That's how we got up to 7. The Replica Siegebreaker is also clear only. It isn't super important. The burn ground doesn't stack. It is very nice. In a situation where I was doing like pinnacle bosses only, I would replace it with a Darkness Enthralled and 2 jewels that had life, minion life, and some sort of minion damage or minion speed. Alright, so how do we calculate how much DPS we're doing? Well, that's a bit interesting. So Risen Val Fanatics have the same amount of life scaling, and resistances that our Spectres do. Unfortunately, our Spectres aren't in Path of Building, so we can only calculate the minion instability hit. So going via that, We know right now in my build, it takes 1.3 seconds for each explosion to happen. Each minion takes 0.3 seconds to die and 1 second to recover in my current setup. So the only thing that I can do is a little bit of manual math. And by manual, I mean a calculator because I'm not a caveman. So we know we have 805,000 average damage hit from the minion instability hit. Now we have 7 Spectres, so we're going to times that by 7, but they only deal damage every 1.3 seconds. So I'm going to divide that by 1.3, which brings us down to 4.4 mil. However, we also know that we're getting an extra explosion for 15%. So at that point, we have to times that by 1.45, which is the extra that we're getting off their own explosion. This gives us a 6.2 mil DPS, as well as our burning round that is roughly 300,000. So plus 300,000. So the build only currently does 6.5 mil, which is like a little on the low side for me. But I have to tell you what it feels like when I'm doing invitations and bosses. It feels like somewhere between 12 to 15. And I think the reason for that is just because it's 100% uptime damage. You cannot stop under any circumstance. Doesn't matter where you're dodging, doesn't matter where you're moving, doesn't matter if the thing hasn't loaded in yet, doesn't matter if you're on an 800 ping, your damage will always be this. It will just always be that, no matter what you're doing. And it feels amazing. So, the other things to go over in this build is the most important thing for our defenses is going to be to get increased effective charm jewels. Obviously, if you're in a trade league, try and get anything else useful to go with it. The reason for this is it block and spell block caps us, except for me, I am not block capped. Why am I not block capped? It's because of Necrotic Aegis. When I can drop Necrotic Aegis and put my own shield back on, I will also be block capped, which means I can craft a heal on block shield and gain full block cap and full recovery, which is my current one weakness right now, is I do not have very much tank or recovery because I still have to give up my shield. So as soon as I can not give up my shield, I will become a lot tankier. Fortress Covenant is an expensive jewel, by the way, just so that everybody knows. We have valed 800 of them in our private league and we do not have one yet. Anyway, that's the build, how it currently runs. I'm going to be working on a min-maxed path of building for softcore trade. So if anyone's interested in that, stay tuned. We'll have one of those in a few days. Quick spoiler for anybody who's in trade. The idea that I had is to drop the Wraith Lord, have only 5 Spectres, but then instead Forbidden Flesh and Flame Liege of the Primordial, put a thread here, use that to grab that golem, minion instability, and the life there, and then have 2 different setups, one with 5 golems and one with 5 Spectres, and have an army of 10 running around exploding things. I think that's going to be real fun, but we'll see if I ever get to try that in a private league. But that's the quick spoiler for those of you who are in trade and want to start min-maxing the thing. All right, that is all. I'm really excited. I got to get back into playing this build, man. This is the most fun I've had in so long. It's really good. Everybody should try this. I will see everybody later. Goodbye.